Hi everyone, it's Allie from 1 Month 2 Cameras, and we are in yet another hotel room. This one happens to be in Prague, as I have just gotten off of a 15.5-hour flight. I know I look so fresh, but I did want to get this recorded because it's long overdue. We are talking about the Pentax 750Z. Okay, so I have been shooting this now for like a few weeks. I've been shooting it kind of around LA, in my home life. I've brought it to Michigan. I've just been kind of trying to test it and push its limits. I really just like, at first glance, the styling of it. I think it's kind of a fun, classic, vintage styling in terms of the body. This comes from the era of 2004, so it precedes like an X100. It's kind of an early jump on the analog vibe styling bandwagon. It's a 7-megapixel camera with the CCD sensor. It has an articulating screen, which is really fun. It has the cutest little opening sound and screen. You can actually customize what the screen says when it opens. Not like your name or anything, but they're like 3 different screens you can choose from, all Pentax branded. It is a metallic body. That being said, it kind of feels a little plasticky. I don't know why I say that. There's like a rubber grip on here, which is actually really nice. The grip has a little mound here, so the ergonomics are quite comfortable to hold. And the body is metal, but I don't know why it's a silver color. Something about it makes me feel like it's a little plasticky. Maybe it's just because it's a point and shoot. But it is very solid. It goes ISO 80, ISO 100, 200, and 400. I have actually been shooting this on auto ISO, which I typically do not do with these older point and shoot cameras. I kind of lock it at ISO 100, but I have not minded it. And it's, you know, in program mode or automatic, it's chosen generally pretty smart settings. I do put it into shutter priority when I need to freeze a little bit more action, and then I will also typically use a flash. But auto ISO worked out pretty well for me with this camera. Now, it also takes SD cards, which is great because these are much more readily available. I know a lot of people just getting into these digicams then get something like the Verb, the stylus Verb, which I shot on my last video, and that has an XD card, which is a proprietary format from Olympus, and then you have to get a card reader and the special card. It's a little bit of a drag if you don't have other cameras with similar needs, so it's a convenient camera from that perspective. I quite like the output of this camera. It shoots JPEG, it shoots TIFF. I don't really shoot this in TIFF because the write times are quite slow, so I was just shooting this in JPEG at highest quality, and the JPEGs were shockingly malleable. They were very flexible, and I really liked kind of using that as my baseline for a light color grade. It's a 37.5 to 187.5 focal equivalent in 35mm. That's a little bit tighter than I typically would like on a compact. I would love compacts that have like starting at 24 or 28mm. That happened a little bit later, typically like closer to 2009, that era, 2011. They started to figure out the optical formulas to go wider on these point and shoots. But 37.8 is definitely a little bit tighter than most, but I gotta say it didn't bother me on this at all. I really enjoyed shooting this at the wide end, and then having that extra reach of like 187 millimeters on the long end was pretty awesome. The lens is sharp. It's at the wide end, it's 2.8 on the aperture, and I think it's like 5.6 on the long end, 4.6 on the long end, so even better. 8 times optical zoom. There's digital zoom from there, but just categorically on all of these cameras, I never use the digital zoom. It's usually pretty crap. It has all your standard features like aperture priority, shutter priority, program mode, auto mode. It also has a number of scene modes, like a crazy number of scene modes. And then it has manual, like all manual, which is really, really nice. And it's actually pretty intuitive to use. You just use the buttons up and down here to control your manual, and then you just like your shutter speed or whatever, and then you flick one over and then you can control the aperture. So, you know, a pretty seamless process. But the best part of this thing, which I love to bits, is putting it either in program or aperture priority. And there's this like little toggle right here on the front. At first I thought that was just like zoom, but it's not. The zoom is back here. There's a zoom toggle back here. This is your exposure comp, which is so nice, just having a physical dial for that versus like going in the menu and controlling it that way. I just really, really appreciated that light touch. You can also program your settings, which I have done. So I have my user settings here on the top, and in my user settings, I've set it up to be JPEG, highest quality. I have it on auto white balance, ISO auto, and then I have it on spot meter. I really do like shooting these old cameras in spot metering just because typically I'll spot meter and then like keep my exposure comp down 1/3 or 2/3 of a stop. And that's giving me a really nice sort of starting point for post-production when I bring these files into my computer. There's also a few other fun little pieces on this thing. So it has a panorama mode. Now the panorama mode on this, you turn it on and it says set direction. So I'm gonna say, I wanna start it going this way. So I'm gonna sweep this way. It will take a picture and then you get you get to see the picture and it lines up the sort of like a tracing style 1/3 of the frame of the last frame so that you can line it up and position it all so that it will merge well in post. It does not merge the image together in camera, which I think is really interesting because most cameras do that, but this must have been pretty early to the technology, and so it will just show you how to line the camera up really well, and then you batch that together in Lightroom or Photoshop and just photo merge, which is one click of a button, and it works quite nicely. There are some digital filters in here. There's like a black and white, a sepia, a red filter, a blue filter. I don't mess with any of those. Sometimes I'll do the black and white, but generally speaking, I just like leave it at its regular color. There is 2 levels of color. There's standard color and vivid color, and I have been enjoying the vivid color. Sorry, it makes really loud noises, by the way. The noises on this thing are not subtle. The flash is good and strong. It has a powerful flash. You can control the exposure comp on the flash itself, which is great in the menu. You can control very minor other pieces of the JPEG, like sharpness. You can go down, I think, 2 clicks or up 2 clicks. And tone is, like I said, standard or vivid, which is your color. And your contrast, same, 2 clicks left, 2 clicks right, just to enhance that. I just keep those dead down the middle. The auto white balance is really good. I do often put these into daylight auto white balance just to like control the consistency of the color balance when I shoot older digital cameras that might not have great readings. But I leave this in auto. It works really well. It has this other fun feature on here, which is this little microphone input here. So you can take a photo and then actually record an audio message to go with the photo. This takes me right back to journalism school in 2009 when I was like really obsessed with that feature and like looked for that in a camera because I wanted to take a picture of something happening or a person on the street, and then I would record the note, like how to spell their name, what the caption should be. I mean, once upon a time I wanted to be a photojournalist. So this feature was like a really exciting element of this camera, and it still, even though I don't use it, gets me kind of like juiced. It makes me really excited. It has a movie mode on here. I really don't often pay attention to that. The movie clips are 640 by 480 or 320 by 240 in 30 or 15 frames per second. Enjoy it. Then it has 3D mode. Now, it actually will do, like, the idea behind the 3D mode is you shoot a picture and then you shoot just a little bit to the right or left of that picture, and then you get, here, I'm gonna do it. Then you get these two photos lined up together, and then you would get, like, you know, your 3D glasses, and, oh, it's gone. But you'd get your 3D glasses, and then you would get like a 3D capture. It would appear in 3D. Well, I don't use it that way. I use it similar to the way I use my Olympuses, where it does like a diptych in camera. And I have enjoyed that as a feature quite a bit. And it'll just stack those two pictures next to each other, and you can kind of create your in-camera diptych, kind of like a half-frame camera. There is an eye viewfinder, an optical viewfinder, so critical to me. I really like being able to actually look. Now the problem is it's just literally a box, an optical viewfinder with no relation to the lens. So it's not exactly accurate. It's just a very rough framing. And when you zoom the lens in all the way to 187, forget the eyepiece. Like, it will actually like follow the length in terms of the eyepiece appears to zoom in. But in terms of accuracy, you are so far off point if you try to compose through the viewfinder at full telephoto focal length. It's not even funny. Like, I was doing a beach scene trying to capture like a lifeguard stand. Guys, I'm really tired. A lifeguard stand really far down the beach. And I zoomed in all the way to 187 equivalent, framed it up, and it was like I captured the sky. It was completely off. So don't rely on it. It's just nice to use as a little bit of a rough estimation of your frame, and it works much better on the wide side than the telephoto side. That being said, there is a diopter adjustment, which is really nice. It shoots 4:3 aspect ratio natively, which I really love. It's my favorite aspect ratio. It's why I love Micro Four Thirds so much, and many other reasons, but I do love that crop. One thing that makes me crazy is if you set it up a certain way and then you turn it off, it will not remember those settings, or at least mine isn't doing that. I don't know if there's like an internal battery that's not containing that information or holding that information, but the way I get around that is just setting it up as a user preference and then just switching it into user mode, and then it remembers everything that I had previously input as like my user one option. Something that I was not expecting with this camera is the incredible battery life. A lot of my old point and shoots have really small batteries that do not hold much charge, and I have to carry many spares or just like treat it like film and know that I'll be done in a couple of rolls. If you get this, I don't know if you need a backup. Something I haven't really talked about in my other reviews yet, which is definitely something to consider with these old cameras. They are old, they are digital, they do get hot pixels. Hot pixels are just pixels that die on the sensor and that show up as just like little spots. And this one does have hot pixels. It doesn't bother me. I kind of sometimes enjoy it. Like, sometimes it's fun. It just gives it a little bit of that like grimy quality. But if it does bother me, or if it's in a bad spot, they're so small, they're very easy to clone out. But it's something worth calling out. Like, that's just kind of a universal thing that you have to learn to be okay with if you're gonna shoot these early digital cameras. And here's another like weird small touch that actually makes a really big difference to me is I like to shoot a lot in portrait orientation. So I'll shoot in portrait orientation, and then in playback, you very easily just like rotate the image in review mode, and then it just downloads that way to my computer. So I'm not having to sit in Lightroom and like flip images a bunch of times, which I don't know, it's like a very small thing, but it makes me kind of crazy. It's like one of my pet peeves, which it shouldn't be because I shoot in portrait orientation a lot. Another feature this has is interval shooting. So you can shoot like with an intervalometer built in here, but that's obviously just going to be in JPEG. Well, not obviously. Later models, like modern cameras, you can do that in RAW. This one is going to be in JPEG only. I did not use the intervalometer at all when I shot it. It's not something that I kind of do a lot of, but it's nice that it's there. It also has this really crazy feature. It's this little like meter graphic on the top here where you put it in that mode. So loud. You put it in that mode and it gives you like this spot meter, and then you just use it as a light meter, which I think is so cool. So like you could carry this as like your light meter / Polaroid camera to your film camera and actually use it that way, which is amazing. The only issue is your ISO is only gonna go to 400, right? So like if you're shooting 400 film and pushing it to 1600, or you're shooting Delta 3200 if you can find it, then you're gonna have an issue because you can't meter off of this unless you wanna do the math in your head and you just do the stops. But I just think it's like so wild and cool that that's on here. I've never seen that on another camera. So really good performance out of this camera. I do like this styling. I do like the look. I will be hanging on to it, but it hasn't been like totally, it hasn't sparked joy in the way that I would have thought. It's an interesting thing. I think it's a great camera, but it's not my favorite. At the same time, I'm not selling it. So it's really good. I definitely do recommend it. If you have access to it or you can find one, definitely scoop it, try it out. They resell without an issue. Like, they are kind of hard to find. So if you find one, grab it. That's all I can say. So that's the Pentax 750Z. And I have, in this very moment, decided to shoot my Sigma DP1S. This is the first sort of line of Foveon sensors and certainly the cheapest way into the system if you are Foveon curious. If it wasn't obvious that I was Foveon obsessed, perhaps this will help. So that will be my next camera. You can follow me at 1 Month 2 Cameras on Instagram if you want to see shots from the Sigma DP1S. You can also join our Flickr group. We have a Flickr page, 1 Month 2 Cameras, where we're all posting as a community all these amazing shots from these cool old cameras. So I welcome you there. Our Digi Discord is linked below as well. And if you have any questions or if you have experience with the Pentax 750Z, please comment below, because I don't know why the love wasn't totally there for me, but I'd love to hear everyone else's thoughts, because, you know, sometimes it's just like a time in your life or a moment or whatever, and it's like, I could very well have gotten it wrong. Maybe I missed something. It's a great camera. I love it. I just don't love it as much as some of my other cameras. I have a feeling this one, there might be romance. All right, okay, until next time, I'm going to bed, and I'll see you in 2 weeks.